Good morning. Good morning. Welcome, 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 welcome. Good morning, Grand Rising. Welcome to Soulful Solutions. My name is Dr. Debbie Green, and it's an honor being with you today. Before we get started, we have a very sensitive subject and a wonderful guest. And I just want to reach out to those that are listening and say that wherever you find yourself, know that it's going to be okay. Know that things are going to change. Know that things are going to get better when you allow yourself just to be. That's all that matters. Sometimes we have to pull ourselves out of the scream of life and just be. Just feel the presence of our being and keep ourselves in a certain plateau. So be encouraged today. Again, we have a wonderful guest, Mr. Theodore Sweet. This topic information is going to be the veterans and mental illness, and hearing his story, so that we can have a better understanding of what is happening or what's going on. So again, just get ready, and just be aware. Just listen, and hopefully you will learn something, that you didn't know before. And thank you so much for joining us on Facebook as well as YouTube and Blog Talk. Thank you so much. And continue to do your greater work, which is take care of yourself. I'm going to introduce our co host as always.
Well, Grand Rising,
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
I am fantastic. How are you?
I am wonderful. I am wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. I was waiting. We're going to introduce our guest for today. We're just hoping he's going to get his camera because I see him in the backstage, but I don't see the camera on. So I
Okay.
did text to ask, and he did say he received the link. So again, this is a very delicate subject because mental illness is real. It is very, very, very real. And I thank you. I think, what's amazing is that we know it's there. I call it the invisible pandemic.
Mm, the invisible pandemic.
Yeah.
That is real because we have had people who've had issues every single war. Veterans come back and
Yes.
the trauma that they've experienced is not really addressed. We have the parades during Memorial Day and all of that, and the Fourth of July celebrations, with the bombs bursting in air kind of thing with the fireworks, but we don't deal with the trauma of war, and
No, we
everyone
don't.
has produced
We
it,
do, we
and that
not.
means we've got just in this nation we've got what five major wars that over the generations people have experienced, and there are certain behaviors that it creates when you have memories that profound that don't go away. So it is time we dealt with it from one who's gone through it.
Absolutely. Yes, and I see it up close and personal, every day. I witness PTSD at the highest levels of just, severity of how it can literally change a person's life. And they can actually lose themselves. They can lose themselves. They can lose their awareness. They can lose so much. I've had one experience that I want to share really briefly before we bring our guests on. Um, I remember he was in his it was like mid 70s, and when I first met him, he came in, he was very unkept,
Mm,
disheveled, and his family brought him in for evaluation, and from that point on, he was literally, as he told me, he said, I was still a POW. He said, even though
Wow.
I made it out of it, he was in a special unit because he wore one of those purple hats, purple hats, getting the what they call the tokens of war, where they, and oh, let me give you a cap to say so everybody will know that you did something, and
Mm.
and that was just one of those areas of his life that I call it the challenge journey because he said it was because he was part of a unit of 18 men and three came back out of the 18 and out of those three, two committed suicide and he was the only
Wow.
living one out of that unit. And he often asked himself, he had survivor's guilt. He said, I don't
Yes.
understand why I survived. And as I
Mm.
told him, I said, well, you came to shore and you made it through, but you were still a POW in your mind. So
Mm.
that's what PTS do. PTSD it puts you in a captive state of reoccurring. It's literally punching the button to revolve the experience over and over and over again, and until the subconscious becomes the conscious, the
Yeah.
subconscious becomes the conscious. And when the way I got his attention, I said no more POWs. And he
Mm.
looked up at me, and from that point, because it was a group of men, and from that point on, he said he looked at me as different. He said no more POWs. He said, I'm still a prisoner of war. I said, you're a prisoner of fear, sir.
Ah.
You have moved
Brilliant.
beyond the war. The prisoner of fear is where it still consciously and subconsciously has you in captivity. So I heard the stories. I heard the horrendous stories that most people wouldn't have listened to. But fast forward in this story, that gentleman is now, not living in fear anymore. He's not afraid to come downstairs. He's not afraid to go to sleep and wake up in nightmares or daymares, because he has tackled his enemy and he has won and he has conquered. So he can enjoy his family, he can enjoy his grandchildren. And it was an honor to do that. As I always told him, he said, he said, fear, don't you? I said, yes, sir, I know it very well. Because I had
Mm.
to deal with my own fear, and fear, one of these things, because it literally searches the corridors of the mind. And when it gets in the heart, it starts to rest in the heart. Because think about it, fear is an emotion. It is not, it doesn't even exist on the outside world. It's an
Yeah.
emotion, and that emotion then permeates through the mind. So we're going to learn a little more about that. So I want to introduce our guest, Mr. Theodore Sweet.
Wonderful.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Good morning. Grand rising to you. Grand rising to you. Um,
Grand Rapids.
Thank you for allowing us to in your presence. Yes, welcome your presence this morning. Because again, let me tell you, I do not, we call minimize people's presence. We didn't have to be here, but we are, and regardless of how we are present, I tell you, we are present. We are present, absolutely. Thank you again for being on the show. And, I know this is a very sensitive subject to you, so we're going to get right in it. And I just want you to feel comfortable and speaking, and allow us just to know a little more about you.
Well, like I said, my name is Theodore Sweet. I go by Teddy most of the time, but I come from a family of military veteran. My parents have been married currently 62 years. I'm 56 years old, 57, July 25th,
Mm,
2023, God willing. But I come from, like I say, a military background, very disciplined, very rigorous discipline. That's one thing I can say. No talking back. Yes sir, yes sir, yes ma'am. No sir, yes, no sir, no ma'am. But my military journey started at the age of 18. I joined the military in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and a lot of military brats. That's what they call the children of soldiers and so forth. They call ourselves
Mhm.
brats. It's a intimate term. But a lot of brats don't want to go into the military because they see it all their lives. And so what ended up happening, I joined the military because I didn't want to burden my parents with the cost of going to college and so forth. So I joined in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and I had a 9-year military career where I was stationed in Fort Drum, New York, Turkey, Greece, the Middle East, Italy, and then White Sands Missile Range. I served in the first Gulf War, Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm, but my what ended up causing me to have a mental condition, which is claustrophobia and agoraphobia, didn't even happen in combat. It actually happened in Erzurum, Turkey, which is probably the
Mhm.
most um, barren, most desolate tour in the United States Army. Is very close to Syria, and it's kind of like the Soviet Union's. How would I say it? Siberia, if you want to look at it as a social equivalent. But what happened was my job in the military, I was a unit armor. I'm the individual that issues every soldier their weapons. And each unit has about 300 to 400 people. And so I was exempt from duty. I'm a weapons expert. I can put together, take apart an M16A1 rifle. For those civilian users, that's the weapon called the AR-15, which is really prevalent during a lot of these school shootings. That's like the weapon of choice. So that's the weapon that,
Mhm.
us in the U.S. military, especially the Army, use. And so the weapons are contained in a vault due to the fact that they have to be secure on the installation. And I got locked in that vault for a period of probably between 10 to 20 minutes. But it may seem like days when you're in that kind of confinement. And the after effects of that was I'm claustrophobic to this day. I spoke to Miss Dr. Green offline. I'm gonna say this personally and publicly for the first time. I'm gonna defeat that fear of claustrophobia, because the funny thing about it is that in the military, I was a parachutist. I jumped out of planes and so forth. I don't have any problems with doing that, but I have problems with being in the elevator. As funny as that might seem, or riding the metro. I can't be in confined places. And due to due to that due to that confinement, my life has changed in a whole bunch of different type of ways. After graduate, after finishing with my military service, I went to New Mexico State University, got my bachelor's in criminal justice, and then immediately went to Vermont Law School and got my JD from Vermont Law School. And then my first job as a lawyer was adoption law clerk and a criminal law clerk in the district court, superior court in Washington, D.C. I had a plethora of positions: HR director, D.C. Chamber of Commerce. I worked at U.S. Postal Service, being a FOIA specialist. Um, HR director and EAP program director at DC Chamber of Commerce. And then I worked at the mayor's office. And this is where I think it goes in concert with what I'm doing right now. I was the director of ex offender affairs. And in that capacity, every individual that came from what we call on paper, being on probation or parole, coming from prison, in jail, which is a local confinement, these individuals would come to my office for services such as food services, shelter. We call those twin brothers. You can't eat if you can't sleep somewhere. and then employment services,
Mm.
metro cards, place to take a shower, place to worship, and so on. So I was basically, dealing with society's downtrodden individuals that would have the scarlet letter, almost like emblazoned on their head. And I found out that these were good people. Also, all of us are God's children. But in this capacity, you would see a lot of individuals that would have mental illness. And sometimes individuals portray mental illness. Sometimes people look at that as them portraying criminality, but if they're actually different. And in that capacity, I worked for 2.5 years. And in my current capacity as a lawyer, what I want to do is I want to give back, because I know that a lot of times, I think Dr. Green, you talked about it. Fear is a very funny concept. Um, it's something that deals with your internal thinking. It may not even be manifested in person. So what I plan on doing is going to 22 cities, because that's the number that is commonly used is for how many veterans per day commit suicide, taking their lives. A lot of times the figure is between 18 to 22. Department of Veterans Affairs would like to have the lower figure, but that figure is only just looking at the figures of individuals that are coming into their offices. It doesn't take into account individuals that are outside of their offices, which that is the more holistic number. And the project that I'm embarking on, what makes it a lot different is that I'm going to give a juxtaposition to church. In church, they'll tell you, you'll get the benefit of preaching and so forth if you come inside the doors. But if you look at the teachings of Jesus Christ and so forth, he didn't really preach in a church a lot of times. He preached on the streets, he preached where the people were. And that's what I plan on doing, not analogizing myself to Jesus by no means. They say to be Christ-like, and I try to do that, failing miserably, but I try. But what I'm trying to do is going out into the streets and meeting people where they are, and I think an analogy there would be kind of like a church's outreach program. And and seeing the veterans, and letting them know that the services that they do have available to them, because sometimes if some people are ignorant of things, and that's a word that's very controversial. A lot of times people think ignorant means stupid, but it's not. It just means you just don't know. And one of the reasons why,
Don't
um,
know. Mm.
yeah, one of the reasons why this problem is so prevalent, I'm just going to tell you about facial hair. Right now, I'm wearing a goatee. I want to tell you why that's important. It's not important that I'm wearing a goatee, but in the military, you're not allowed to wear facial hair and things of this nature. It's a very rigid, disciplined environment. So one of the first things a person do when they get out of the military is they grow a beard, they grow facial hair, they get rid of their uniforms, and they try to get any kind of connection to the Army or the Marines or the Air Force or the Navy. They try to break those connections. We get rid of our uniforms and so on and so forth. And one of the connections we break is that all important one with Veterans Affairs, where you can actually get your benefits. You don't want to have nothing to do with the military when you get out. I totally understand it. And so some of these individuals get out and they actually have an after effect, like some of the female population. They might have MST, military sexual trauma, due to the fact that some of the men or women that were in charge of them took advantage of them. And then when they wanted to, report it to the chain of command, the abuser looks exactly like the person who you got to report it to. So it goes underreported. And a lot of
Mm.
times these issues can manifest later on to poor performance in life, homelessness, drug usage, and so forth. And you think that you're looking at a bad person, but if you know the real origin, or what we will say ideology of this story, the person started off as a good person. It's just that some person down the line took advantage of them. But not to be too verbose, but that's what
Mm.
the story is basically going out, you know, engaging about 30 to 40 to 50 veterans, apprising them of the services, giving them an email address and a cell phone. And then at a period of 1 year afterwards, I want to go ahead and I want to be able to call them or email them with the specific purpose of getting a return call, email, or text, letting them know that they're alive. And and that I would consider a success. And I want to, promote this as best practice to the Department of Veterans Affairs, because one thing I know about being in the government, and the one reason why I was talking about my background, not to sound self-grandizing or anything, is that I worked in the private sector, I worked in the government, I worked in the local government, federal government, I worked in the in the nonprofit sector. And I know one thing: change in the government does never come from within the government. We got to have individuals outside the government give the government their best
Mm-hmm.
practice and so forth. And I tell you, I know this program is going to be seen by, many people, I hope, but there's a magazine in the military called PS Magazine. And it was a small, kind of like a comic type magazine, and it deals with preventive maintenance and services of vehicles, weapons, aircraft, and so on and so forth. But the civilian public also got a copy of this magazine. The reason I say this is that you would have problems with Humvees, jets, and so forth. And some of the individuals recommending changes to the aircraft, weaponry, and so forth would be individuals that were not even in the military. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the reason why I would say change comes from
Mm.
everywhere. It's holistic. It's
Everything.
every, you know, all individuals that could, that have information that might be productive to the operation of aircraft, weaponry, whatever. They could be a veteran. They can be a person who never served in the military, but it was one way in which people could be patriotic and give back to the country. And so I've been in the military in all aspects. I've been a dependent, I've been a brat, I've been active duty, and now I'm a veteran. And I definitely want to give back. And this is one issue. I say this, and then I get off my soapbox and take questions and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
It's an important issue because of this. Every active duty member is going to become a veteran. And if the veteran services is all, the military population is a voluntary service population. We just celebrated Memorial Day on Monday. Our country is protected by people who volunteer, raise their right hand and say, I volunteer to do this. If we lose a certain amount of people that are willing to do that, our country's national defense and security is at risk, because who's going to defend us? And if people think people don't want to attack each other, all you got to do is look at what's happening in Ukraine and not the Soviet Union, but Russia right now. They're attacking these individuals because they feel that they want to have dominion over them. They want to have authority over them, and they're fighting back. And I'm saying, if you think that can't happen in America, I live here in Washington, D.C., and I never thought I'd see anything like January 6th, but I've seen it. So how we treat veterans is
Mm.
very important, because that's how we recruit individuals into the military. And I just tell you this, and for my veterans and active duty that's listening, they'll smile at this: the two hardest jobs in the military is a drill sergeant teaching soldiers how to become teaching civilians how to become soldiers, and recruiting's harder. That's getting the bodies for the drill sergeants to get to. And you can't recruit. And recruiting is a lot harder today than it was in yesteryear, due to the fact of the one thing that a lot of people have in their pocket, which is a cell phone. And with Google, the recruiter can tell them, oh, you're going to have this and this and this in life. And they can go ahead and just speak into the phone, and they can say, well, they can challenge that because there's information on the World Wide Web and the internet that says otherwise. So it's an actual national security issue, more so than the debt ceiling, because the National Defense Department, the two largest budgets in the government are the Department of Defense, and the second largest is the Department of Veterans Affairs. We're
Mm,
first cousins. No, I would say we're brothers. And
Mhm.
with that, I give it back to you, Dr. Green.
mm.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, that was definitely a wholesome information, and a lot of it that I didn't know. So I'm thankful that you are sharing it, and I can definitely see your passion in this project, Project 22, because that's what it's about. It's about saving lives. I mean, if one does not save oneself, you know what I'm saying, it's hard for them to save someone else. But at the same token, there has to be a antidote to fear. There has to answer, because again, fear is one of those things that cause you to self-destruct. That's the only thing that causes a person to self-destruct in some way. Our massive amounts of responsibility as human beings on this earth is to reach the inner court of our communities where fear is evidently present. um, and what I also want to is, did you find in your, because I know we're about to go to break here in a minute or so, did you find in your research and studies about the severity of mental illness in state to state, or were you kind of focusing on the area that you lived in?
Oh, no, I'm focusing on the United States, continental United States in general. And one thing about
Okay.
mental health, and we talked about this offline. I think that it's stigmatized because first time, the first thing you think about when you hear about mental health, you think about cognitive function. Otherwise, is the person slow mentally, or you know, are they academically or educationally challenged? So a lot of times, individuals are apt or less to even report that they have a mental health issue due to the fact that they don't want to be looked upon with a stigmatized eye, if you will, where I think the next horizon in mental health care is everybody identifies as having this. This isn't something that I'm speaking to. If you're hearing this with two ears, you have a mental health condition. You may not know it. I'm not trying to stigmatize you, but if you feel sad or you feel happy,
Mhm.
you laugh, that's a mental health condition, ladies and gentlemen. This isn't something that is
Yes.
addressing, you know, a distinct population. And if you think that's not the case, just remember something we had in the back window just recently, COVID-19. A lot of people, felt that they had mental health issues of anxiety, claustrophobia, agoraphobia, and so forth and so on. And those issues just didn't, go away. They're dormant. They'll come back up. And that's the only thing that's different between someone like myself. I did not, well, going back to your question, Dr. Green, let me be very succinct. I'm going all over the United States, mostly the majority, the major cities. And with that, the fallout will reach across the state, across the country, because a lot of times, like with affirmative action and so forth and so on, it always comes in a big state like California, like the Bakke v. California decision that
Hmm.
basically revolutionized affirmative action. Then it goes from the West Coast to the East Coast. So all over the country, 22 major cities I'm dealing with.
Wow.
Gotcha. Yes, yes. Well, when we come back from the break, I definitely want to focus on PTSD, because that's one of the major diagnoses. Actually, it's not the only one, but that's one of the ones that uh, usually occurs when a person it goes through any type of traumatic experience. And I want to really talk about the symptoms of that, as well as the inner corridors of the subconscious with that, and also look at different ways that we can, come back, because we never know a veteran, someone can be listening right now to think, this is something I have to deal with. I can't get out of, because we know that doctors usually label things uncurable most of the time. When they can't find an answer, when they can't find a solution that is either qualitative or quantitative, it's uncurable. That's what
Mm.
they'll say. Oh, it's something you have to cope with. It's something you have to live with. So they don't look out of the box of things. If it's not written down, if it's not measured, if it's statistic, if it's stereotypical, it's what it is. And every situation is different. So we want to definitely tackle that once we come back from break. We'll be right back.
We have an opportunity to transform the whole global society in the next 50 years. 50 years from now, the earth will be populated by a new generation of adults, many of whom are yet unborn. Our mission is to nurture them in childhood with love, guidance, and protection, and to raise them in healthy, happy families. If we impart values of compassion, generosity, and respect for fellow human beings in the next generation of children, they will create a world where we can live together in. This is our goal. Be a part of the transformation. Get your copy of the book, The Female Solution. Go to www.naimalatif.com. That's www.naimalatif.com. Everything you need, what your body needs, is found in nature. So Susan Essentials doesn't do it any other way. Susan Essentials provides your employees and individuals access to over 20,000 nutritional products, and they are shipped direct to your door. Because Susan Essentials is certified in plant-based healing, we're permitted to offer you the best nutritional supplements on the planet. They're non-GMO and sustainably produced, and we take the guesswork out for you. Let Susan Essentials help you take control of your health today. Do you want to live in a world without war? Join our global peace movement. Heavenly Culture World Peace Restoration of Light transcends culture, religion, ideology, and other boundaries to achieve peaceful harmony in the global society. HWPL is committed to bringing world peace and cessation of war through peaceful dialogue between religious groups. I am Director Shin-Suk Kim of the HWPL Chicago branch of North America. Join us for our next gathering. Call 773-580-1501 and be a part of the movement for world peace. Email us at chicagohwpl@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back to Soulful Solutions. My name is Dr. Debbie Green with my wonderful co-host, Naima Latif, our executive producer. And we have a wonderful guest, Mr. Theodore Sweet. And our topic today is a very sensitive topic and a very important one to me. Is dealing with veterans and mental illness, the aftermath of a challenged journey. We do know that one thing about fear, false evidence appearing real, or false, realities as one should create in the mind. The thing about this is it's created from, I call it the inner court mind, which is the subconscious. So once we went back from break, I just want to kind of help people to understand PTSD and the severity of it. Some people may, they may not know a lot about it, but the symptoms they vary from person to person. It's similar, but they are also different. I compare it to almost like being in a room with a door locked and you're moving around and you're walking around, but at the same token, you feel you can't come out. And in this room, there are a lot of things that's happening. This room is, carrying all of the hidden horrors of your experiences. Because if you know, PTSD is not something that experience when good things happen or things that have pleasure. It is the things that are challenging to the mind with the negative emotions, such as feeling of overwhelmness, traumatic feeling, intense anxieties, and these things of this nature. So the shifting, and just from my experience, when a person does deal with any traumatic experience, it is often the memory. It's the memory, that the part of the brain that houses the memory. Think about it. How do you know it was something that made you feel uncomfortable? Because the memory held a threat, which means I felt very threatened when this was going on. And when one feels threatened, one loses control of their selves. They lose control of their feelings. And then three regular I call them stations in our mind. It's drive, it's soothe, and it's threat. Threat means that, oh, get ready, something is coming. Oh, get proactive. That's the reason why the adrenaline is also really bring to prepare us for fight, flight, or freeze. Well, unfortunately, in PTSD, what happens is the brain freezes and it stays in a suspenseful moment in time. Subconsciously, we are not aware that we are there. Consciously, we only become aware when we feel it. It's not when we think it, it's when we feel it. So the emotions of the threat becomes foresoever real. Even though those things are not happening, they become reality to us. So what happens? Our sight, our touch, our smell, because we have seven senses, not just six. Our secondary view of the threat then goes forward to our forward brain. When I say forward brain, I'm talking about your forward executive director, temporal frontal lobe. And just from my experience, but not experiencing PTSD, but just really talking and conversing and assisting those to understand fear. Uh, the part of the brain, which is the right hemisphere, which holds all the emotions of your experiences, then starts to shift, and then the logical side of the brain starts to stand down. Okay, I know that sounds a little weird, but the emotional side of the brain is where the inner child, we call it the inner child emotions. The inner child emotions, they lay dormant until the eyes, sight, touch, senses are alerted through some type of sensory, right? Sensory. And then those emotions come forward subconsciously. Now you living in the past. That's what we call PTSD. You relive the past, whether it lasts for 2 minutes to weeks or months. You're still reliving your past. So when it becomes a factor of disformity is when the mind then gets trumped. I call it trumped, which is for the sake of understanding, you have brain, just like we have an autoimmune system, we have a auto brain. Our auto brain is our subconscious brain. Your conscious brain is the one that's wide open. You're making decisions, you're looking and you're seeing, and you're hearing and you're smelling. But the auto brain is a involuntary response, which means that again the eye sees something that is similar or smells something that's similar to that experience, that traumatized experience. And when that happens, the auto brain then shifts very hard into what they call threat mode, thinking that, oh, you're back there, you're experiencing this, and the conscious is not. So now the realities clash together like a big tumbles, boom. You know what I'm saying? So when they start clashing like that, they immediately start to overload your sensories. And when your sensories get low, you literally start feeling the fear. Now you really think you're in it, right? You really think, because it becomes so surreal to you. Now, false evidence appearing real has took your reality from you.
Mhm. I have a question.
Literally,
I have a
it's taking
question
your
based
reality.
on what you said
Hmm.
and what Theodore said about uh, when you come out and you want to remove all signs of the military. You grow your beard, you get rid of the uniform, and yet the job that a lot of veterans end up being drawn to is police work. And I would think that that would be a triggering thing. You're back in a uniform, very 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 rigid kind of structure, and you're around a lot of violence. I would think that that would probably be the worst job that a veteran would want to have, because it puts you back in the combat mode and all the memories. And we had a guest on a couple of years ago. She was a veteran suffering from PTSD, and she had, been in the area of police work, and she said that it's discouraged for you to seek mental help for PTSD if you're going to go into police work, because the impression is that you're not mentally stable. So you might have PTSD, but you can't acknowledge it or get treatment from it. And yet you're in an environment that seems to be triggering. So do you think police work is not a good career for someone coming out of the military? And are there some situations that could trigger episodes of PTSD?
May I speak on this?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
No, I took a pause because I wanted to do that for effect. A lot of,
Mhm.
I looked at a lot of Toastmaster presentations and so forth and so on. Kennedy, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King, they used to pause before effect, when they're talking. Let me tell you why police work is actually good for a veteran, not necessarily for a civilian that just comes off the street wanting to be a police officer. I'll give you a perfect example, and I can speak about this, and I'm going to specifically talk about weapons because I'm a weapons expert. I used to shoot the weapon every day for 9 years. A police officer can't say that because they only shoot their weapon probably 3 or 4 times a year when they go to the range, if that. That's the reason why a lot of times you will see individuals in situations where it's a him or a me or him situation, where they're engaged in a conflict where they might want to use their sidearm, and then they involuntarily fire it. A lot of times, firing that firearm, other than the required time they have to go to the range, that's the only other time they fired it, or only other time they were ever put in a situation where they had to do that. In the military, we train all the time. Training and Doctrine Command, TRADOC. That's the military command that governs all training in the United States Army. I want to give you an example of something that happened to me personally, and just let you understand this. Father's Day, about 4 years ago, I was jogging at night. It was like 2 o'clock, and I saw a car on the side of the road, and I thought I thought the people were going to be asking me questions on how to get to someplace. When I came up to the car, I had my earplugs in. I took it out. This kid pulled a gun on me and then start to shoot. It was a water gun, but I was in front of this school and I kind of like start to run, out ducking and running as they teach us in the military. Here's my point. I reported it the next day, and they ended up finding that the individual that pointed the gun, he had did it at about 4 other individuals. They thought they were doing it for giggles or whatever. The next, I was talking to my psychologist. I talk every week to a psychologist, in reference to, claustrophobia and, and a dearth of other issues, and I'm not afraid to do it. Matter of fact, there's a line of people trying to get counseling now because of COVID-19, because they found out that they had issues that were lie dormant within them. So I'm not ashamed to say it. But anyway, the next day I was jogging, and then I've been jogging ever since. Here's the issue. When I spoke to the mental health professionals about it, they said, Ted, you don't have any issues with someone pulling a gun on you or anything of that nature, because in the military, we train with that scenario every day. Me getting into an elevator, though, is a big deal because I'm not used to being locked in a vault every day. So a lot of times when you sit there and you see individuals and they're talking about, oh, well, he fired the weapon. He was in a dangerous situation and so on and so forth. Wake up. In the military, we're in a dangerous situation. The whole purpose of the military is to defend the nation by way of war. That's the reason why we have weapons. That's what a weapon is for. That's why I hate, when I hear people talking about weapons and so forth. Yeah, those weapons should be banned. I'm a weapons expert. I had an open invitation. I'm dark-skinned black male. The NRA gave me an open membership when I came out of the military just because of my job. And anybody doesn't realize this, the national spokesperson for the NRA, which I was recruited for, is a black man. He's a black man. He's a lawyer. If you look at our careers, they almost mirror each other. And he's speaking, in reference. Only difference is his job in the military wasn't one where he was a weapons expert. I say this, and another thing I want to say as far as PTSD, and I really want my veterans to hear this. In the military, well, in the veterans world, where you try to get benefits, in other words, you're getting paid for your military experience or military disability, you need to prove 3 things. The first thing you need to prove that an incident happened in the military that caused your PTSD or anything else. And I'm going to get people off of PTSD, and I'm going to tell you why right now. VA probably doesn't want people to hear this, but I could care less because I want to speak to my veteran brothers and sisters. The second thing you have to have is current diagnosis of PTSD or any other condition. And then the third, you got to have what they call a nexus, a link between what happened to you in the military and the current situation that you're in now. With PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, that's one of the conditions that is in this book called the DSM-5, where I think we're on the 5th edition right now. And that book is diagnostic and statistic manual of mental disorders. Let me tell you why, and I'm going to tell my brothers and sisters out there, I'm going to speak a little different. The cadence of my voice is going to come. The sergeant suite's going to come out right now. This is why PTSD is something of in the streets, we like to use the word a trick bag. Here's why. You got to have specific proof that incident happened to you. Like, let's say a landmine going off, or, you got hit with an RPG holder or something of that nature, rocket propelled grenade or anything. You're at the Patriot range and something happened to you. We don't record what happened to us in the military. We don't have people there with cameras and so on and so forth. So a lot of times when you claim PTSD, the first thing they want you to do, they want you to prove incident veracity or proof of the incident, and you can't because you're not recording yourself. But this is what I want to tell you, ladies and gentlemen. Any condition that's in DSM-5, anxiety disorder, depression, they all grade the same. Any disorder is treated the same. So you don't necessarily have to have PTSD. And sometimes you don't want to have PTSD because individuals such as Timothy McVeigh, who was Oklahoma City bomber, John Muhammad, who was the DC sniper, all of these individuals suffer from PTSD. And so you don't want to put yourself in that community of individuals who are infamous, not famous, for their military service in the condition that they derive thereof. So, like me, they wanted to say I had PTSD for being inside of the vault. What ended up happening, I couldn't prove it because who's going to be there at a desolate, I was in the most desolate, far off duty station in the United States Army at the time, Erzurum, Turkey. So no, and this was in 1988, 89, I apologize. I was talking to my older sister and she sat there and she says, Teddy, remember when you were in that car accident? And I go, what? In 1988 in Ottawa, Canada, I was in a car accident. I had totally forgot about it. But guess what? Allstate Insurance Company, the largest insurance company in the country, had proof of that accident. And so that's the way I got connected for service connected for my disability. I got 70% for claustrophobia. They had to cut me out of the car with what they call this thing, a Jaws for life or whatever. But I had proof of that incident. It was on leave, but I actually had proof of it. And when Dr. Debbie was talking about, the parts of your brain that are active, inactive, I was just spellbound by that because this is something that was put to the recesses of my mind only when my older sister said, Teddy, you remember that accident? If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be service connected right now. But that was irrefutable proof. I got service connected for claustrophobia, and they couldn't deny me because I had proof I was already suffering from it. So I had the current diagnosis. What I needed was proof in the military, and that was what they call a category 1, almost, which is it's like the reverse of hurricanes. Category 1 means the most severe, and car accidents is considered most severe because you can die in them. And so that's what I actually had. And so PTSD, a lot of us have it, but all mental health conditions in the military are the same. If any of my veteran brothers and sisters are listening, please remember that, because that's one of the things that the VA is notorious for doing. They'll sit there, you'll say, oh, I have PTSD. You did a lot of, volatile things in the military that normal people don't do. The first thing they're going to want to do is deny you and keep you from your benefits. When we're talking about suicide, and here's the thing, if you're living in the streets and you have a bad condition and you live through the condition, and then you have paperwork in through the VA and you don't get your conditions verified, and then that's what people kill themselves over, because they know they went through a situation, they filed the paperwork, and then they don't get verified for it. They get denied, almost like they're malingering or lying, and that's not the case. That's one of the reasons why I'm out here doing what I'm doing, because and I'm not the only one, and a lot of other advocates, but I say this to the cows come home. PTSD, yes, but they want you to have a marker. And I know this is called Female Solutions. I want to talk about another issue called MST, military sexual trauma, which happens to a lot of ladies and a lot of ladies, female soldiers in the military. And I'm going to analogize that with what just recently happened with our former president, E. Jean Carroll, who just recently was awarded $5 million for the former president allegedly assaulting her. One of the things, as a lawyer, I followed that case. One of the things in that case, they didn't have camera proof of it, but they did have other proof of it, and it's called markers. What a marker is this: if you say that if you're a lady and you say that you were raped in the military and you didn't report it, they're going to say, how can you prove it? How can you prove it? You use markers. If you were raped in 1988 And then you were in the military from 85 to 90. From 85 to 88, you were a perfect soldier. But then 88, where you alleged the rape happened by your supervisor, you didn't say anything. But then you start to get what they call an Article 15, disciplinary action because you were drunk on duty and things of this nature. That's a marker. You became late. That's a marker. So what happens is, outside of actual evidence, you have what they call circumstantial evidence, which basically are called markers. And another marker could be a letters that you sent home to your mom. Oh, I feel bad. I feel like I'd rather not be here, which in the military is called suicidal ideation.
Wow.
And a lot of times people are scared to talk about suicidal ideation. But as a lawyer, I want to educate people on this particular act. Saying you have suicidal ideation isn't going to get you what they call Baker Act. Baker Act means you say something to an investigator, to a medical professional, which states like, oh, I feel like killing myself. I feel like killing someone else. They're Baker Act you, which means they're going to commit you to a mental institution because you said something which could be taken as harming yourself or harming someone else. That's called you're actively contemplating suicide or what they call homicide. Suicidal ideation is different. It's like sometimes I think I don't really, I feel like the world would be better if I wasn't here. That you're talking about not being here, but you're not talking about the planning of it. It's a difference. And to get 70%, listen better, to get 70%, all you need is suicidal ideation. You don't need to talk about suicide. So a lot of times they'll ask you that one question. They'll say, do you think about killing yourself? No, I didn't think about killing myself, but I thought about not being here. It's a difference. One is without planning. The other one talks about active planning. And that's how you get your percentages in the military. And that's the benefits. The benefits at 100% will get you about $4,000 a month. So if you got somebody living in the street, serve their country honorably, don't have anything to eat, because I'm going to tell you this, and this isn't no knock on anybody that says it, because I know most people say it with good meaning, but I'm going to say something that's going to get an amen from a lot of people out there called veterans. Thank you for your service. Can't buy you a cup of coffee at 7-Eleven. So I sit here and I say this: what will get you a cup of coffee and what will pay your rent and so forth is that 100%, which will get you $3,750 a month for the rest of your life, going up as inflation. And then you got educational benefits that you can get. You can get housing benefits and so forth. Your life can actually change, but you need to be able to engage the VA in an educated way. And the VA has this reputation, and I'm not saying they advertise it, but they got this reputation in reference to people, giving, applying for benefits. In the little saying goes, deny, deny, deny till they die.
Wow.
And that is something that I experienced. Not, I'm still here, but I was denied benefits for a period of 10 years. And they know for a fact that I did what I did and I am who I am. I wanted to, like I said, I'm a weapons expert. I'm not, but I say this: when I got out of the military, December 1st, 1994, I never touched a weapon since that time frame. I went to college, law school, and been a lawyer ever since. But at the same point in time, when I go inside confinement facilities and so forth, like prisons, jails, and so forth, and I talk to individuals, a lot of them happen to have the same skin color as me, unfortunately. Sometimes when I talk to individuals like that, I can't get their attention until I tell them what I used to do. And I used to be a weapons expert, and then they used to talk about, oh, well, Mr. Sweet, well, what about this and this and this and this? But let me just tell you this to all the G's and people in the street and the people who want to be tough. The thing that you do with a weapon more than anything when you serve in combat is you clean your weapon. You clean your weapon, you clean your weapon, you clean your weapon, you clean your weapon, and you understand what this acronym called SPORTS stands for. SPORTS, sports. You're going to have a person, a black drill sergeant is probably listening. He's smiling. A white 4-star general is listening. They're smiling. Sports. Squeeze the trigger. A stoppage happens. Squeeze the trigger. Pull the charging handle to the back. Observe the charging handle. Observe the chamber. Release the charging handle. Tap before it says squeeze the trigger. SPORTS. What I just said these things real quick. I didn't mean for civilians to even understand it, but what I'm talking about, people who are in the business of firing a weapon as part of their job should know what I'm talking about. And the guys on the streets, they don't know what I'm talking about.
Wow.
They're not about that life, but they want to try to be about that life. And that's when you get people getting killed because I was paid to be a weapons expert. I'm not that anymore. Don't make people tough. It's your job. And I give you a perfect example of it. 3 weeks ago, I had a panic attack for the first time, a full-blown panic attack where I thought I was having a stroke. My blood pressure was 195 over 114. If you know anything about systolic and diastolic measurement of blood pressure, that's super duper high. My blood pressure is usually about 118 over 80. And I thought I was having a stroke. I had actually talked it up in my mind that I was having a stroke because I say, oh, my right side is twitching, I had built it up in my mind to the point that I'm having a stroke. And the main reason I want to say this, and I want to say this, and then I want to say something. I want to compliment myself, but I say it openly for these particular reasons. It's not a shame to talk about your mental health condition, because at the same point in time, I graduated with honors from New Mexico State University, Bachelor's of Criminal Justice, and I graduated from predominantly white law school, Vermont Law School, and I got my JD. So cognitively, I'm okay. I'm at the top upper percent. But at the same time, I thought that I was having a stroke, but I was actually having a panic attack. Wow. They present differently. But the bottom line is this. One thing that wasn't fake was my blood pressure was as high as it was, and that could cause aneurysms and things of that nature. But luckily it didn't. And the doctor, when he was talking to me, he was, a matter of fact, he says, you work yourself up there, soldier. And I was in a VA hospital, which understands me and so on and so forth. So I was in good hands and whatnot. And now I'm not, I used to always fear having a panic attack and fear full blown, but now I'm not fearing that. I talked to Dr. Debbie about the concept of fear, and I'm past that. So veterans, if you remember 3 things you need for your claim: get a copy of your military service records, prove the fact that you had the incident, get treatment for it now, have a doctor write a letter, call it Nexus letter, and get paid. Quit living, downtrodden and so forth. Live proud. And there's going to come a point in time we're going to get our benefits anyway, because that's what I'm advocating for. Because here's another thing, and I hand it back to you, Dr. Debbie, because I don't want to be verbose here. When we join the military, we go in what they call MEPS, MEPS, Military Entrance Processing Statement, and they check you out like a used car. I didn't say a new car. I said a used car. A new car doesn't supposed to have things wrong with it. A used car is supposed to, and they check you out like a used car to make sure they catch everything. But when you come out the military, they'll treat you like you're a new car, and they won't check you at all, knowing that you're jacked up, knowing that they'll be paying you while you're going out the door. But what they want to do, they want you to play 3-card Molly. They want you to sit there when you get out the military. They want you to prove everything that happened to you when they got your medical records, and they already know what happened to you. They got a training command. They got a thing called TRADOC, Training and Doctrine Command, which they have psychologists, scientists, and so forth. They already know what percentage you are when you walk out the door. But they're saying, I hope this guy, I wonder if he's going to file and get his own benefits.
Wow. It's all about.
And it's a national security issue because I'm telling you, if enough of us do not serve this country and protect this country, you got people that are looking at the United States, and we have a lot of enemies, and I'm not trying to say what they will try to do or whatever, but at the same point in time, you better treat your veterans and you better treat your active duty people right, because these are the people that are protecting your country. And it's not a game. It's not a game. What happened to me when I was 20 years old affected me when I'm 56 years old. I'm 6 feet, 190 pounds. I'm in great physical shape. But at the same point in time, what happened to me had nothing to do with my physicality. It had to do with my mental state of something that happened to me a long time ago. And it's nothing about cognitive. It's something that just is part of the process. It's just like CTE in football players. You know, a lot of them take hard knocks and so forth and so on. And then later on in life, you sit there and you can see that they can barely talk.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Yeah.
Because
The brain.
those hard knocks to the head cumulatively damage them.
Yeah, definitely. We got to take a break, and we got a caller on the line.
Yes, absolutely.
This has been quite educational, and I got some definite questions about why don't they want to give the veteran benefits, but we'll talk about that when we get back. So if you're listening online and want to join this conversation, give us a call, 515-605-9325, and press 1 so we know you have something to say. We've got a caller on the line. We'll get to you after the break. And if you're watching us on Facebook and YouTube, write in your comments, and we'll share them with our listening and viewing audience. And we'll be right back after this quick break. So stick and stay. Don't stray away. We'll be back in a moment. Stay with us.
We have an opportunity to transform the whole global society in the next 50 years. 50 years from now, the earth will be populated by a new generation of adults, many of whom are yet unborn. Our mission is to nurture them in childhood with love, guidance, and protection, and to raise them in healthy, happy families. If we impart values of compassion, generosity, and respect for fellow human beings in the next generation of children, they will create a world where people can live together in peace. This is our goal. Be a part of the transformation. Get your copy of the book, The Female Solution. Go to www.naimalatif.com. That's www.naimalatif.com. I'm Beata, your holistic life coach. These days, it's more important than ever to work on your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. Are you consciously breathing deeply in stressful moments? Do you have a plan or daily routine to maintain balance in your awesome body? Are you struggling to be disciplined in your eating habits? When you partner with me, I'll help you develop a personalized health plan that works for your particular lifestyle. You can find out more about me at yourholisticlifecoach.com, where you can also review the 3-step protocol to guide you to abundant health. That's yourholisticlifecoach.com, and I'm Beata. Do you worry about finances, family, health, job, relationships? Are you in pain? Do you feel stuck? If you answered yes to any of these questions, help is available. Don't worry, you're not alone. It's part of the human process. You only feel this way because you haven't mastered the voices in your head. No hype, just down to earth, solid, workable tools and techniques that you can practice daily. It's really food for the soul. Whether you want to learn how not to worry about anything, reverse type 2 diabetes, publish a book, promote your product or service, or just make extra money. Take advantage of the deal of the day. Go to zeldaspeaks.com or call 312-409-6619. Mention promo code The Female Solution and get free shipping. That's zeldaspeaks.com or 312-409-6619. Stop worrying today. Visit zeldaspeaks.com.
All right, all right. Welcome back. Welcome back to Soulful Solutions. Again, for those who are just joining us, my name is Dr. Debbie Green with my co-host Naima Latif, our executive producer of the Female Solution. And our special guest today is Mr. Theodore Sweet. And it was a wholesome conversation that he is talking. Focus today is veterans and mental illness, and helping and assisting them in some type of way to have a more productive life. As you were talking about earlier, but we'll call in just a second. I have two children that were in the military. My daughter, my youngest, and my son was in the Air Force for 10 years. And he does have panic attacks, and it's based on fear. And it was because he did a tour in a part of Africa. I'm not exactly sure what part it was, but wherever it was some and he did. I learned about his particular situation was that, as you said, a lot of time the fear door is open even when we're not aware of it. And if there's a previous traumatic experience of fear, it just intensifies the fear that's ongoing or coming towards you. So I know that he had a fear of what we call heights. His job, in the military was working on airplanes, the big jets and things of that nature. And a lot of times he will be in them, and even though he never parachuted or anything of that nature, but it was just a point of being up that high sometimes it made him uncomfortable. So he experienced that, and it was something that kind of lingers. He's pretty much has gotten over most of it. Thank goodness he had a therapist for a mom kind of helped him to kind of move out of those corridors of his mind and stuff like that. But at least like every so often, sometimes if he has to take a flight and when he goes up into, he'll feel the butterflies and then it kind of set down a little bit. And again, our whole being experiences fear, mind, body, and soul. So that's where the panic attacks come from. The body has a conscious. It's brain. It's not just, the body has a conscious. It remembers. And when it remembers, it's just, again, the brain actually communicates with the heart, and the heart is what causes the behavior in the body. And all those things definitely kind of each other, and that's when the racing heartbeats come, the heaviness in the chest, feeling numbness, feeling like you can't breathe. All of those sensations are replicas of physical fear. You have mental, emotional, and physical fear, and all of those actually make you experience it on either mild, moderate, or severe, situations. So I just wanted to kind of explain that. If we when you did go to the doctor explained to you about body conscious fear, because they just might say yes, you had a panic attack. And the reason why your blood elevated is because of the body conscious. Think about it, because the blood is the unit, to life. So it is active and living, because it's inside of us. And so when that cortisol and that adrenaline is released in the bloodstream, what it does, it puts us again on alert mode, and the brain just gets a shock, right? So think about it. That's what elevation, it doesn't get low, it gets high and gets off us. And the goal is to get it back to where it should be. And there's different techniques and different strategies to also calm the body conscious as well. So gonna definitely take care of you, sir. So we could take that. We could take that caller.
Okay, area code 314-677. Your mic is open. Introduce yourself to our listening and viewing audience and give us your question for our guest, or Dr. Debbie Green. Go right ahead.
This is Bianca.
Yes, Bianchi from St. Louis. Yeah.
Yeah, war is really an experience that people can't imagine. I look at documentaries back in 1942 and World War II with the Bataan Death March. He had over 76,000 Americans and Filipino prisoners that was forced to march over 60 miles by Japanese soldiers. Over 12,000 of them died on that march, and those that was living had to carry the bodies of the dead. So it was pretty horrible. And it's something that you should not want to experience, but you always have to be cognizant that it can happen, because there are enemy players out there in the world. And you made mention about soldiers going into the police departments. I think that's a good thing to have an honorable discharge soldier in the police department, because they have underwent training, they have proven discipline and the respect for authority, and can do things with a level head. That's a good thing. And as far as weapons concerned, I highly support the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution. It's not weapons that kill people. It's people that use weapons in an illegal way to kill and do harm, do things illegal. I got a revolver that I'll put at the foot of my bed with the hammer. They haven't went off and shot me in the foot. And I can use it as an analogy. So I just wanted to put it in, and I wish you luck in whatever endeavors that you engaged in. I'm a lifetime member with the NRA. MRA is an advocacy organization, just like the NAACP or the ACL, that advocate special for people rights that they think that they are being denied or being trampled on. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Bianchi. We appreciate your testimony on that. Just one quick question about that, and I guess my thought, which a lot of other people have expressed, that if somebody, even if they're honorably discharged from the military and they've been trained, but they've been trained for combat, they've been trained to address enemy combatants, and I'm just wondering if police work is really the same thing. I mean, you do have a lot of instances where people are committing crimes, breaking laws, endangering life. But in situations where somebody, accidentally runs a stoplight or their tail light is out, the fear that citizens have is that somebody who's been trained in the military is always on alert and always reacting as if someone has a weapon and threat. And that's why people are wondering, well, why are we getting these situations where people are getting shot for a broken taillight? The Philando Castile kind of situations where the officers say, well, I don't know why I shot you, but you just shot him just because he said, well, I have a conceal and carry permit. And, why did that trigger the officer to shoot him? So that's the thing that people are concerned about, is the training preparing people for combat situations that don't really exist every day on the street among civilians? And are they responding in a military situation when this really isn't a military situation? That's the question.
May I speak on that? It's
Absolutely.
the opposite, actually. Police individuals in the military are trained to handle hostile situations in a calm manner. I'll give you a perfect example. Boxing. A boxer and a fighter. A boxer is somebody who can get punched in the face, but still remembers his combinations, remember his footwork, remember his leads, remember his reads, and so forth and so on. A police officer has training one time a year, where a military individual has it every day. And if you look at any of these individuals, George Floyd situation and so forth and so on, you can just name them. The amount of times that a military veteran police officer was involved in an altercation was under 5%. So in other words, all these individuals that are shooting black officers, black individuals, minorities, and so forth and so on, those aren't veterans that are doing it. Because remember, veterans are only 7% of the total US population. And then you got those individuals that go into military, let's say military type occupations afterwards, let's say police departments or fire departments and so forth and so on. You know, in other words, give you a perfect example. Would you rather have someone that comes out of a civilian, let's say a regular rural town, who's never had somebody in his face yelling at him and so on and so forth, where he has to maintain discipline? Like in the military, what we do, you have a person in your face yelling at you and so forth and so on, putting you under stress, and you having to operate under that stress, and you having to make the right decision under that stress. We have that kind of training for years. Where you got someone coming out of rural America, the only time he ever had anybody yell at him has been his mother or father, if that. And then he's put in a stressful situation. He's acting out of league. I'll give you a perfect example of what I'm talking about. David Petraeus, General David Petraeus. He was an individual that led us through Iraq, Afghanistan, the surge. Former CIA director, was unceremoniously kicked out of government for a marital affair. But let me tell you something about General David Petraeus. He was in combat for 14 years. The right side of our arm, every 6 months, you have a hash mark. He had hash marks from his elbow to his wrist. It was remarkable seeing someone like that. In other words, this was a man that lived in combat. But you want to know something? General David Petraeus was never harmed in combat, but in Fort Benning, Georgia, he was shot in the chest during a training accident by a dang E1 soldier. General Jack Keane saved his life. These are people who are famous if you ever watch Fox News. But here's my point. Petraeus was shot in his chest and almost died during a training accident, but during combat, he was never touched. So the point I'm trying to say is that, you know, anything can happen in training, but you train as you fight. You don't have the amount of times or altercations that a military member, white, black, or any other color, accosting and unceremoniously abusing a civilian is almost non-existent. It's almost non-existent because these individuals are trained to handle things under stressful situations. And another thing, the Baton Death March. I smiled when I saw that, and you can look it up because Google says it. I did the Baton Death March 3 times causing White Sands Missile Range, which is a desert. All you got to look it up. It's a desert environment. One of our yearly activities is Baton Death March, and we usually have this stuff to make sure that we never forget what has happened to us beforehand.
Wow.
So to say I did a Baton Death March, what it is a 15-mile road march that you use with a rucksack and boots, and you're in uniform when you're actually doing it. And they have some components of it where you actually will carry individuals.
Wow.
So I'm familiar with that. And then the thing about POWs, there's two acronyms: prisoner of war. And I had POWs in my arms room all the time. And I'm a believer in the Second Amendment, and that's called privately owned weapons. That's why when I sit there as an armor, I have the acronym means two things for me. We have a soldier that has a weapon. A soldier owns a weapon, like in Fort Benning, Georgia. He's supposed to store it in my arms room, and then he can withdraw it out of my arms room, if he wants to go to the range and shoot it. I'm by no means, I would sound like the biggest hypocrite. I'm a believer in the Second Amendment, and the gentleman is talking about his revolver and things of that nature. I agree totally with every bit of that. I'm talking about the weapons that I have to store in my arms room that can shoot 60 rounds in about 15 seconds. That's not a weapon that's used for hunting or things of this nature. That's a weapon that's used for war, because war is this. I have 100 people. Let me just understand the concept of this, because it's never been explained before on TV, and I think they do it on purpose. We got 100 people over here. I got 100 people over here. 99 of my people died, and I got one person left. That one person can still kill this 100 because of the capacity of that weapon to shoot rounds off. And me changing magazines, I can kill 100 people with one weapon because the weapon can fire that fast. That's the whole purpose of combat. I just said it in a nutshell. They don't like to say that on TV. The weapon that's in my arms room, that are in arms rooms that are in the country right now, aren't necessary for protecting yourself in your house via what the Second Amendment to the Constitution says. It's not. I hate to say it. I hate to say it. And I want to get back to something that Dr. Debbie said about her son in his claim. And this is all about benefits. 40 feet is the declaratory height in which they say you would have fear of heights. But if he has a fear of heights right now, he shouldn't be suffering with it. He should be getting paid for it, because the second they allow you to join the military, there's a doctrine called the presumption of soundness. That means maybe he did have a fear of heights, maybe he didn't, but they let him in.
Ooh.
And that's called the presumption of soundness. So when he gets out and he presents any condition that he did not have when he came in, or they let him in with, he needs to get compensated for it.
Wow.
And the main reason why, and I'm going to give you the main reason why veterans, they don't want veterans to have all their benefits and so forth. You've heard of the debt ceiling, right?
Right.
In which they're saying the government might get shut down because of money and so forth and so on. Yeah. Well, all these benefits that's supposed to go to these veterans and so forth and so on, and it's in budgets, If these monies don't go to these veterans, they go to other programs and so forth, which is kind of like pet projects of these congressmen and so forth. So, yes. So these monies are supposed to go to us. It's called unclaimed funds, and they know it. But if they don't, they'll go to other individuals.
And that's what they're trying to do, not pay the veterans so they can spend the money elsewhere.
Okay, I'll give you a perfect juxtaposition. If you owe taxes, it doesn't go away for 10, 20 years. They become an arrearage, and it'll come up with the interest. But if you're owed money, if you don't collect your tax, if you don't collect your earnings in 7 years, they go to what they call unclaimed funds, and that's used in different parts of state budgets or federal budgets. In other words, if you owe money to the government, there's never statute of limitations. But if the government owes you money, you better believe there's a statute of limitations. And then when that statute runs out, that money will be distributed elsewhere. And that's the whole purpose behind, the veterans. They know that individuals have these incidents. They know that they house the records and everything. In other words, you got to request your records when you get out of the military. And then you got to go about putting together your packet, what they call fully developed claim, FDC, or you can let the veteran organizations like the VFW, the American Legion, and so forth put your claims in for you. But that's what I do for work. 11 years ago, I didn't know what I was doing, but I feel like this, and I'm going to say it on this format, I'm one of the best in the world at doing it now, as far as getting someone their benefits. So when I hear a case, so forth and so on, I know I can get the person their benefits because I happen to know the law. And Dr. Debbie, your son, he was in a place, Africa. Let me tell you the difference between the NFL and we both wear each other's uniforms, but here's the difference. Because if you watch the NFL, you see them wearing a lot of military themed uniforms, jackets, and so forth and so on. And us soldiers, we wear their uniforms. What they do in the military, what they do in the NFL, they're playing a game. We're real life. There's a lot of cameras in the NFL, but there's no cameras where your son served at, Dr. Debbie, and where I served at, and so forth and so on. And we're paid minority of what they do, but we protect them. They don't protect us. The last time I checked, we should be getting all kind of benefits. And the thing about it is, sometimes veterans are apt to be quiet and say, "Well, I don't think we deserve it." They don't like to ask for their benefits, but I'm asking on behalf of them. Pay them their damn money. I was about to use another word in front of damn, but I didn't want to do that. I want to respect your show. But the thing is that no, we shouldn't be begging for anything.
Right.
Not begging for anything.
Right.
We got to take a last break, and we come back.
Absolutely.
Our switchboard now. Have a comment. Press 1 now. We want to give you a chance to ask your question to our guest, Theodore Sweet, or to Dr. Debbie Green. And if you're listening online and want to join this conversation, give us a call, 515-605-9325, and press 1 to let us know you have something to say. And if you're watching on our Facebook and YouTube channel on Soulful Solutions with Dr. Debbie Green, write your comment in and we'll share it with our listening and viewing audience. And we'll be right back after this last break. So stick and stay. Don't stray away. We'll be back in a moment. So stay with us.
Have you ever dreamed of going to exotic places, meeting fascinating people, enjoying uplifting music, and spending nights in a luxurious hotel? Do you look forward to a relaxing vacation where you can walk along the beach or sit in a quiet park and enjoy the sunset or sunrise? Whether you're flying around the world, driving across the country, we will share travel tips that will help you stay safe while you enjoy the journey. Join me every third Saturday of the month, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, and move around with Deborah here on the Female Solution Show. Call in and comment 515-605-9325 and press 1 to speak. Mama Joy. And I'm Reverend Rosemary. Join us every second Saturday of the month, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Central Time, here on the Female Solution Global Radio TV show for the Neighborship of Joy. We will have powerful conversations inviting women to walk in the light. So call in 515-605-9325 and press 1 to speak to the host. You can also join us live on the Female Solution Facebook page and YouTube channel. So see you on the second Saturday on the your health. I'm Beata, your holistic life coach, and every Friday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, I'm here on the Female Solution to empower you to make choices that will assist your evolution to abundant health. I'm also blogging every Sunday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time at Soul Purpose Healing, where I bring you a spiritual chiropractic adjustment to bring you back into alignment with our Creator's compassion and join me every Friday morning at 8 a.m. and Sunday evening at 8 p.m. for a time of unity, enlightenment, and love vibration. Shalom.
All right, all right. We are at the top of our hour. And again, welcome to Soulful Solutions. My name is Dr. Debbie Green with my wonderful co-host, Latif, our executive producer of the Female Solution. And we have been actually listening to Mr. Theodore Sweet that is talking about our topic of the day is veterans dealing with mental illness. I just want to say this. I think Project 22 is much needed. And again, I extend my hand to assist you or help you to in any way to help others because it is a real thing. When a man loses his mind, he loses his whole soul, and people don't realize that. And I mean, I'm talking about not the soul that God has given him, but the soul that he walks with, because the mind is one of those things that if you're not presently present with, then you have lost yourself. And I think that's something, that people deal with each and every day, because I know this is my field. Have been in for quite a long time. It's helping people to retain and sustain and maintain the highest self. Because the highest self is the one that's been, downtrodden by life issues, going through different situations and impacted, which is causing fragmentation, just brokenness in some area. I mean, we all experience things from day to day, moment to moment. And as I tell my clients and my patients, you have to learn to live moment to moment to keep your ever living mind because everything happens so quickly. And before you realize that you are lost, like what do you call, you lose yourself in transition, by being distracted, by being not consciously and emotionally aware for yourself. Again, the being needs all of you to watch over it. As I said, self rescue is real. It is very tentative that we do this on a daily basis. And, because mental illness has taken a whole nother I think definitely within the last just 10 years, to be honest with you, just looking at the suicidal rate in veterans as well as just in, civilian life as well. The suicidal suicide is the top 10. Out of the top 10, suicide is right there between 6 and 7. It's right there. Doesn't matter from the ages of 10 years old to 100. It is forever present. And if someone has asked me, what do you think is suicide? Well, I would tell you when fear corrodes the mind and the brain, that's when you no longer think that you have presence to live. You no longer care about your own sense of being just, again, just walking on earth and going through changes and full responsibility because the responsibility has been taken over by fear. I want to give these sentiments because it's false evidence of here real, but I've given other one as well. It's really two of them. Is it forget everything and rise? Forget everything and rise, or forget everything and run. I will beg the first part. Forget everything and rise, because if something has you at a lower present mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, you have to ask yourself a question: how long shall I stay there, or shall I make my power choice to escape when it is inescapable? Because it is. The brain always, always has a way out. It's just the corridors of the brain has been closed, and we hold the keys.
Mm.
We
Mm.
hold the keys by choices. When you make the
Mm.
choice every day to
Mm.
keep your freedom, freedom is free. But again, they understand the word free, just like they don't understand the word peace. And it's not that they're ignorant to it, like Mr. Sweet says. It's just that they just don't know.
I don't know.
They don't
Now I
know. They're not familiar with it. So what do we do with that?
mm. Now, I have a question about those who get to the point where they don't want to be here. Is it the frustration of not being able to get their benefits, or giving the runaround? They need help, but yet they run into roadblocks, and the frustration just overwhelms them. Is that what's driving this 22 veterans a day average to commit suicide?
I say it's a combination of that. If you call the Department of Veterans Affairs, you'll get a strange, not a strange message, but you'll get a message that you don't get with other places that you call, other departments. You'll say, if you're contemplating suicide, please call this number, and they'll give you a telephone number that you're going to call.
Mhm.
Ask yourself, why is that? Why is it that when you call other numbers, you don't hear that? You know, if you're contemplating harming yourself, or if you need to talk to someone, they'll openly talk about suicide.
Mm.
If you're hurting yourself or you got a mental health condition, please call this number. You're not calling the hospital. You're calling, a veteran's office, and they talk about that because they know that it's not just a concept. They know that it is real. And let me tell you the one reason why your question can be answered, and in a way it can be left to theory. It could be answered with failed attempts for suicide, but when a person commits suicide, you don't have them to talk to anymore.
Right. Right.
And so a lot of times you might sit there and you'll say, well, this veteran died, but at the same point in time, this veteran was in pursuit of their veterans benefits. I remember, I'm glad they got AI now, but I remember waiting on when I was getting my GI Bill, and also when I was trying to obtain my veterans benefits, waiting on hold for hours. I'm
Oh,
not saying that in general. I'm talking about waiting on hold for hours, or sometimes waiting on hold, and then your call drop and you have to call again.
mm.
Pre-internet,
Mm.
and that can give somebody a you
Push you
know
over the edge.
yeah, a kind of like a loss in faith that they're going to be done. They're going to be vindicated and so forth. You know, if you put in a claim and you feel like you have all the elements of the claim, and then you get denied.
Mm.
And here's the thing about it: the common law system of law is adversarial. It's a us versus them. It's adversarial. The VA concept isn't adversarial. They have this one concept in the VA called duty to assist.
Mm.
It's mandated through the CFR, Code of Federal Regulations, that there's a duty to assist the veteran. It's not supposed to be adversarial, but it's made to be that way but it's
Mhm.
not. In other words, they're supposed to give the veterans the claim that they so heartfully and dutifully earn. But a lot of times it's done because it's played out in real life where you got to sit there and act like you are in an adversarial environment, and and it is. It's almost like if someone was to say, oh, is this a discriminatory environment? I look at it like this. If you have to ask yourself if something is discriminatory or hostile and so forth, more than likely there's enough evidence there to prove that it is that kind of situation. You know, your mental concept or your mental construct isn't telling you a lie. It's like when someone say, I didn't mean to offend you,
Hmm.
but you did,
You did.
you know. And I think that's kind of like how I would put it.
So they're not giving the benefits that are rightfully due and earn the veterans because they're hoping to hold on to the money and use it for something else. And so therefore veterans are often denied claims that they should be given. And that's really the bottom line of what we're facing here. Wrong intentions when it comes to the veterans as opposed to the duty to serve. Like most insurance companies, they're trying to not pay the claims. Is that what's happening?
Right. It's just like the debt ceiling issue. And when you deal with humans, I'm going to speak in the spiritual realm. You're dealing with people and money. And when you deal with people and money together, there's a construct in the Bible called mammon.
Mm.
Mammon. And it's what a person will do for money.
Mm.
What a person will do for money. And if you think that they will not do something ill-willed, just watch an episode of the news on any day of the week, any day of the year, and you'll see good meaning, college educated individuals, like the debt ceiling issue. That's just something I can speak on. This isn't something they don't want to pay the bill for something that they already spent the money for. It's that simple.
Yeah.
They say, oh, well, we want to cut spending. I say, no, you already spent the money.
Yeah.
Pay the bill.
Yeah, you owe the money. You spent it
You
all.
want to tie other things to
Exactly.
it. And then they're gonna and they want to put our issues at front, our our benefits at stake, other individuals' benefits at stake, our liberty, our credit rating, everything at stake. And then you see some of these individuals on TV that are in elected office, and you think some of these things can't happen.
Wow.
So
it comes down to the ethics of the people that are in the system that's supposed to administer things the right way. Either they have the ethical values to do it or they don't. That's really what it comes down to.
Right. It's ethics. And like I said, change from the government usually comes without the government. I've been talking to psychiatrists and psychologists for years about my condition. I was talking to Dr. Debbie when we met the other day, and she was talking to me about using sound to help claustrophobia. She couldn't see my face at that time, but I was hanging on every word she said, and I'm going to use everything in my power to make sure she's a vendor and make sure her concept is put out there for the veterans. This isn't a game. This is real life.
Save your lives.
This is real life. And I'm in the condition that I'm in because I'm the one that gave the soldiers their weapons. A unit armor. Let me tell you something. My position, I don't pull CQ. I don't pull duty. I don't pull fire guard. You don't have to know what I'm saying, but people who serve on duty, they understand. They know who the hell I am. And the reason why I don't pull those particular duties is because I'm the one that whenever the alert goes off, the siren goes off, I open the arms room, I open the JSIDS locks, and then I start issuing people their weapons.
Wow.
We're a fighting force when that soldier is married to his weapon. That's when it becomes on. That's when just like I said, football, you choose to watch it. But when we go to play, when we go to war, we exempt football, we exempt everything else. The whole world watches what we do when we play our, so to say, game. And it's not a game.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a game. Where when we talk about homicide, fratricide, and so forth and so on, the military is the only occupation. This is a Jeopardy question. Alex Trebek actually asked it one time. It's the only occupation where you can legally kill someone. So if you gangsters, you think you're about that life and you really want to get out of this and join the military. Because the difference between being in the streets, these people will shoot you back. They don't have a lick of fear in them, unlike a civilian. That's why they say one of the mantras of the street is don't shoot a civilian. You're not a soldier if you're shooting civilians. You're not.
One last question I have. A lot of soldiers who have come back with PTSD, and some of them have had memories where they did have to shoot a civilian. I remember one case where a man was, and I don't know if it was Dead or Storm. I can't remember which one it was, but a woman was running with her hands up, waving a white flag, and because they had seen so many people with bombs strapped to them and things like that, he shot her. And then later they found out she was not, she didn't have a bomb strapped to her. She really was trying to, surrender and not be shot to death. And he was suffering from mental illness as a result of that memory. So in these wars where a lot of soldiers have had to, or felt they had to, or were commanded to shoot at civilians, is that a lot of the distress that they bring back with them, the memories of combat situations when they had to shoot some innocent person, child or whatever, and they have difficulty getting over the memory of
that? That's a very good question. And at first I was having a hard time finding an answer for it, but in my current career I can answer that question. Now I ask you this question. In the field of law, in a courtroom, lawyers are told what they can say and what they cannot say by the judge in a pre-law conference. And then some lawyers like to play on the edges, and they might say something that's prohibited, and the judge will say strike that, and then they'll turn to you and the jury and they say, jury, disregard that comment. So let me ask you this question. Can you disregard something that you rightfully heard with your own ears and eyes?
No, I'm gonna remember it anyway.
Exactly. So you have to be able to, you have to deal with it. And at first it was hard for me, when I sit there and I listen to that question, it's hard to deal with. But at the same point in time, he had good intentions. Think about it. Where he was at, where she was at, and so forth and so on. He didn't want to be there. He was told to be there. The weapon was in his hands, and so forth and so on. This isn't, like I said, it isn't a game. It's not a game at all. And there's a reason why his weapon was trained on that person, and so forth and so on. And unlike the streets, when you shoot someone in the military, it has to be ruled an honorable action. They have investigations and so on and so forth afterwards, that either vindicate you or not. That's why you be hearing things like war criminal and so forth and so on. The Geneva Rules of Convention, the Geneva Convention. So, But I just say it in that concept. You know, it's nothing that's glamorous. It's nothing glamorous about it. But just like you said, and this is one reason why, and I've never been shut up or been told not to speak, because I can speak on it because my life has been about it. When you were talking about that last comment, what made that comment such a interesting question or eye-opening question is, it wasn't a soldier looking at a person and saying stop or whatever. It was a soldier with a weapon trained on someone shooting him. I'm the one that gives the person the weapon. Without the weapon, the question loses a lot of its sting. He could have called her a name or whatever. He could have sat there and shouted at her, but he had his weapon trained on her. And that's what this is all about. So sometimes I talk about these school shootings and so forth, and they have they shouldn't have those weapons. They don't need them. And think about this: for a soldier to get their weapon, they got to come to a person like me. I have to what they call issue their weapon. They got to either sign for it or they got to give me their weapons card. Think about that. They just don't go out and shoot someone, and these are professionally trained men.
60 seconds.
Yes. Yeah. They got the weapon.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I know we've got to go
again, and you know, it's yes, we're at the end. Thank you so much, Mr. Theodore Sweet, and you know, hats off to you as always. You were with your project, and again, let me know how I can be assistance and service to you, because we need you, more of you, as well as, you know, just telling everyone to take good care of themselves. Thank you, Facebook, for joining us, as well as YouTube. Please subscribe to our channel. Again, this is Soulful Solutions, and my name is Dr. Debbie Green. Again, thank you, Mr. Sweet, for talking. Absolutely.
Thank you both, ladies. My pleasure.
Yes. See you tomorrow with health and well-being.
We've come to the end of our show today, but you can hear every show in the archives at www.blogtalkradio.com/the-female-solution. You can also hear today's show on the Female Solution Facebook page. Go to www.facebook.com/the-female-solution. Leave your comments about today's show. You can always reach me on my website at www.naimalatif.com. That's www